been doing, and indeed, of course, you'll have seen in the response to the Iranian transfer of ballistic missiles to Russia that we acted strongly, swiftly and firmly, and we are very closely monitoring what Russia is providing to the DPRK in return for its provision of arms and military personnel, and we are deeply concerned about the potential for further transfers, including of ballistic missile-related technology. That would obviously jeopardise peace and stability not only in Ukraine but indeed across the world, and we condemn it absolutely.
Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 3.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I will answer the honourable gentleman's question along with number 20. The government inherited a situation where the long-term secure operation of the Diego Garcia military base was under threat. The agreement that we have reached secures the future of the base and strengthens our role in safeguarding global security. And of course, the agreement is subject to the finalisation of a treaty which the government intends to complete in the coming months. And Parliament, Mr. Speaker, will have the opportunity to scrutinise the treaty in the usual manner following its signature.
Nigel Farage.
Since the mistaken opening of negotiations by the last government on the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands, it turns out the British High Commissioner and others appear to have been bugged by the government of Mauritius. If the police investigation into this proves to be true, and we can see that Mauritius, their government at least, are bad actors, in the light of that, is the 99-year-old lease that you've got on Diego Garcia even worth the paper that it's written on?
Well, of course, we note the reports with significant concern, but the honourable gentleman would understand that I'm not going to comment on an ongoing police investigation. As I pointed out yesterday, these obviously relate to historical conversations, not during the current round of negotiations, and we're absolutely confident that we've achieved a treaty that meets both our national security objectives, closes off a migration route, but also fundamentally respects the interests of Chagosian people.
Gregory Stafford.
Thank you. How can the Minister continue defending the ceding of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius when China is rapidly expanding its influence in the Indo-Pacific? Yes. With no binding agreement against Chinese military involvement in the future, has the government recklessly compromised British and allied security just to appease vested interests?
Well, I completely reject what the honourable gentleman suggests. So this idea that somehow Mauritius is in hock to China, or that somehow it opens up a place for China. Let me be absolutely clear. Mauritius is one of only 2 African countries that haven't signed up to the Belt and Road Initiative. There is absolutely no way that we would have signed off a treaty, nor indeed the United States, across the national security apparatus, one that compromised any of our security interests or those of our allies. And let me be clear, the unequivocal support from the United States President, the Secretary of State, to the Defence Secretary and across the establishment makes clear that this is the right deal for our security and that of our allies.
Deirdre Costigan.
4, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I will answer the honourable lady's question alongside also questions 6, 13, 14, 16, 19 and 22. Mr. Speaker, October is likely to see the least aid enter Gaza since the start of the conflict. That is unacceptable. As the Foreign Secretary stated on the 16th of October, the UK is pressing Israel alongside our partners to allow the aid into Gaza that is so clearly needed in this desperate situation, and to enable the UN and its humanitarian partners to operate effectively.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recently met with the West London Islamic Centre in my constituency of Ealing Southall, and they told me that they are deeply concerned about the plight of severely injured children in Gaza who need urgent medical help. Could the Minister outline what work she is doing to ensure these children get access to the very best medical attention?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising this important issue, and also to her constituents and the very many people across the UK who are determined to do what they can. Of course, we've seen that also with the UK public's response to the DEC appeal, matched by this government's £10 million. Now, she asked specifically about young children who have been caught up and who have been injured. The extent of disease and injury is significant and deeply concerning. We've provided significant support, including through UK Med, for their field hospital in Gaza. And last week, my honourable friend announced £1 million to the Egyptian Ministry of Health to support medically evacuated Palestinians from Gaza.
Will Stone.
Many residents from Swindon North have contacted me expressing their concerns about Gaza. What steps is the Minister taking to help improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza?
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising this. We see people up and down the country who are very concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Clearly, we now have extreme levels of food insecurity. We're very concerned about the situation in northern Gaza in particular. We have been very clear, including to all actors in the region, via the Foreign Secretary, the Prime Minister and all of us in the ministerial team, that there must be access to the aid that is so desperately needed in all of Gaza.
Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Since the devastating Hamas attack on Israel over a year ago, an estimated 42,000 Palestinians have died, including many civilians, and many more families have been repeatedly displaced. Will the Minister or Secretary of State assure me and my constituents that the Government are using the full diplomatic force of the British Government to secure an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and to allow the free flow of humanitarian aid?
Yes, I can. A resolution to this conflict has been a priority since day one of the new government. We are calling for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages still cruelly detained by Hamas, and for much more aid to enter Gaza. The death and destruction in Gaza is intolerable, and we have made that clear at every possible moment.
Laura Kirk-Smith.
Speaker, I declare an interest as a former board member of the Disasters Emergency Committee, but I am delighted to see the British public's generous response to their appeal. I know its member agencies are doing everything in their power to get aid to those who need it, but one of their member agencies, Islamic Relief, told me yesterday about the situation in Jabalia, where people, I quote, are being starved, bombed and shot on sight. What conversations has the Minister had with Israeli counterparts to end the indiscriminate attacks on people in Gaza and let in the life-saving aid that the British public are so generously supporting?
I'm grateful to the honourable lady, my honourable friend, for her question, and again I repeat our gratitude to the DEC for their work in ensuring that there has been that emergency appeal for the Middle East. Of course, I should have mentioned earlier it's covering Gaza, but also Lebanon, the broader Middle East as well, because there is that humanitarian need that is so urgent. I can reassure her that on issues of access to aid, the UK Government has been ensuring that we've been crystal clear on the need for this, the maintenance of international humanitarian law right across the region, and of course that includes with Israel as well. The Foreign Secretary underlined that indeed at the end of last week.
Dr Zabir Hamad.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Can the Minister reassure me that the arms licence ban, export licence ban that we made in September to Israel covers items that we reasonably believe could be used to breach international law in Gaza? And can she further reassure me that the remaining export licences that go to Israel largely do not cover licences going to the IDF or indeed cover military equipment?
OK, we asked our quick. That's fine.
Sorry, we've got one person answering the...
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Mr Speaker. I do want to be very clear, as I think there is some confusion on this point, which is so important. Mr Speaker, following the 2nd of September suspension, there are currently no extant UK export licences. I will repeat that again. No extant export licences for items to Israel we assess might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. There's only one exception, which is for F-35 components, and the Foreign Secretary has explained this to the House. My honourable friend is absolutely right to say that most licences for exports to Israel are absolutely not for the IDF, and I'm pleased to be able to put that on the record in the House. Thank you.
Neil O'Brien.
The footage of the children caught up in the fighting in Gaza is absolutely horrendous, and so is the footage of those who are held hostage still. Now, firstly, what is the Minister doing to ensure the protection of aid workers in Gaza and Lebanon? And secondly, given that she's just told us that our efforts to get more aid in are not working, what are her next ideas? Where are we going to go from here? Because clearly it's not working.
I'm grateful to the honourable member for his question, and we have indeed seen some extremely disturbing scenes. Of course, it's very important that we ensure that there is verified information in the fog of such a horrendous war, but I know that we will all have seen those scenes and be disturbed by them. Now, the UK Government is determined to do all that we can to ensure that aid is accessing those who need it. So we are using every opportunity